I love a good Christian liar. I asked Larry how long I have. He said a couple hours. I'll try not to get too lengthy. But I was given a big topic to preach on, and the topic is something that's been mentioned here, peace. Just like we think of, the hippies' favorite word, peace. Does anybody have a quick, rough idea without cheating or looking at their smartphone or something? How many times our Bible mentions the word peace? 5,000 times. No, not quite that many. That's a little over the top, but go ahead. 3,000. No. About right at 450 times, give or take a couple if I didn't count perfectly. But peace and a few of its other words that are, the word peace itself, 5 letters, is used usually, but there's one time it's called peacemakers, talks about peacemakers, maybe a dozen each of peaceable and peaceably. But we're looking at about 445 to 460 times, just say 450 times, God talks about peace. And it's fairly evenly distributed per page between the Old Testament and New. And it's not just a New Testament word, it's not just a word about when Jesus walked the earth. It's from as early as Genesis 15:15, where God tells Abraham, you will go to your father in peace. God told that to Abraham in Genesis 15:15. That's the first place you'll see the word. And I like the inference that those, you'll go to your fathers in peace, indicating that they're there too. You'll go to your fathers in hell in peace, but no, it's implying they're going to be there too, I would think. But anyway, peace is used a lot, and it's used even into the book of Revelation. The last one ain't so happy. That's in Revelation, about chapter 6. But at the beginning of Revelation, old John gives peace. And anyway, peace is just what you think it is. I looked up several books. I mean, dictionaries and lexicons, concordances, word anonyms and synonym books and things like that, probably a dozen. And I kind of boiled it down to briefly. Depending on the context you read it in the Bible, the word peace can mean quiet, like when Jesus quieted a lake, peace, be still, or calm. It can mean togetherness, brothers and sisters living in peace, between people. It can mean rest, calmness, freedom from fear. You can close your eyes and sleep at night. You don't have to worry what those noises over there might be, or that bill ain't paid. It's talking about that kind of peace sometimes. It depends on your context, what you're reading in the Bible, and what the word peace means. Of course, the big one is absence of wars or fights, or at least you're in between some. That's called peace, and that's one of the best. And of course, peace with God, a good relationship with God. But it can be rest and freedom from fear, freedom from war, freedom from trouble, chaos, agitation, or unrest, freedom from argument. Peace is comfort. It is predictability. We wouldn't want to, be driving our car and all of a sudden out of nowhere the road's got ice on it, or our tires start becoming triangle shape instead of round. We have a peace, a predictability. I like that word. Of course, loud noise. When a crowd is calmed down, for instance, or we turn off a chainsaw, that's peace. But anyway, it's on the opposite ends, of course, like I said, it's a lack of war, or the opposite of war. It's also, in some cases in the Bible, in those 450, used as a lack of want, a lack of need and hunger, a shortage. Go in peace, be filled. And he's talking about you don't just tell somebody to do that, you give them some bread too. But it's freedom from shortage, or fear, uncertainty, chaos, and so on. And then, of course, there's the good old Soviet version or the devil's version of peace. That means just calm down and agree with me. Do what I want and there'll be peace. You won't have so much struggle if you just do what I want. The Soviets were good at that. And the foolish hippies, much as I love them in their songs, they fell for so much of that nonsense. I know they were phony when they were constantly against war, but pushing revolutions all over. What's the difference? One's got uniforms. But anyway, believe it or not, there are books of the Bible don't have any peace in them. But let's see if lack of a word means it ain't there. You know, some people say, well, if the words ain't there, I ain't going to buy into it. I want God's words to be on it, or it ain't there. At least it's suspect. Well, then Jesus never smiled. Things didn't rust in the Old Testament. I defy you to find them. There ain't no peace in Ruth. There ain't no peace in Song of Solomon. There ain't no peace in very few in Hosea, Joel, Habakkuk. It is in Lamentations. Oh, by the way, would you say that Song of Solomon and Ruth don't have any peace in them? Now think about them. Read them sometime. I'd say those books are saturated with peace. The word's not used, so what? But it's in a good old book that's full of joy, Lamentations. Verse 3:17, and it's in the negative. And the book's name says it all. We'll just hit it real quick if I can find that little book again. It's kind of stuck in the middle of your prophecies, but instead of in the poetic literatures. So it's hard to find. Can somebody find Lamentations 3:17 for me? I should have marked that. Here it is, I got it. Lamentations 3:17. My soul has been rejected from peace. I have forgotten happiness. The typical lamentation there, that's for sure. Yeah, that book's very well named. There's a book there with, you might say, don't have any peace, yet it has the word. But anyway, the book talks about people holding their peace. That means they kept silent. They shut their mouths. Anyway, so it's kind of what we think it is. We think of some words for peace that have, in the Old Testament, the Jews said shalom or Salem. We get the word Salem from the word peace, or vice versa. We get the word peace from Jerusalem. That was the city of the Jebusites. It was a couple hills, and it was Jebus, and they slightly changed it to Jerus, and it means peace in the Jebusites' hills. Is kind of loosely what the word means, Jerusalem. Peace with the Jebusite place. And then in the New Testament, the word Irenic or Irene in the Greek, is the New Testament or the Greek word for peace. And have you guys ever heard the word, we went to a place and it had a real Irenic setting? It means peaceful and calm. You can imagine cows by a green pond and some grass. And so it's Irenic, peaceful, just what you think. Anyway, Jesus is called the Prince of Peace. He says, my peace I give unto you. One time the sea was rioting, and him and his buddies were in a small boat, and they were scared. And he said, what? Peace, be still. And they said, even the wind and waves obey him. My peace I give to you. That meant something to those guys. Jesus tells us, blessed are the peacemakers. By the way, that's the only time that word's used, just once. But again, does lack of a word mean it's not there? At least twice. Let's turn to James chapter 3. Even though the word peace makers is not there, look at James 3:18. The seed whose fruit is righteousness. Righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. So peacemakers are mentioned at least twice. Again, I've got kind of a double thing when I make a message like this, that there's a lot of words in the Bible that just ain't said, but they're there. A thing don't have to be in your face in black and white to be there. At least 2 times, you got a verse here in James that indicates peacemakers. Absolutely, I don't know how else you could interpret it. Of course, Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers. Peaceably sometimes. The hippies, they had their peace sign, you know. I'm not sure the etymology of that one, but they also had the peace sign. They call it the chicken foot. The inverted cross with the. I have been told that if any of you know semaphore Morse code, where you use 2 flags at different angles to send messages, that's NDA, nuclear disarmament. Kind of cute, and it works. But anyway, the first time in the Bible is in Genesis. The last time is in Revelation. One of the first times in Genesis, God told Moses to give Pharaoh an answer of peace. Peace unto you, and fear not. And then look again, something sounds like that in our New Testament, Matthew 10. Matthew 10, verse 7 through 14, or 13. As you go, preach, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons. Freely you receive, freely give. Do not acquire gold, silver, or copper, or for your money belt, or bags of money, or even 2 coats, or sandals, or staff. A worker is worthy of his support. For in whatever city or village you enter, inquire who is worthy, then stay at that house. As you enter, give it your greeting. If the house is worthy, give it your blessing of peace. If it is not worthy, remove or take back your blessing of peace. I wonder if they actually went to some doors and somebody said, you're not welcome here. I'll take it back. And went on to the next. I don't hear that from the ones that knock on my doors. Of course, I don't leave them with a lot either. But anyway, Jesus said that he did not come in one place, he did not come to send peace, but a sword. And he said, I'll divide fathers against mothers and brothers against their own household. I'll make enemies. And he said, if you're going to come follow me and you're going to do the Father's things, sometimes there's going to be some divisions and fights and what would amount to actual wars between you and those you might love. He was in a test there of do you love him most or do you love them most? And but most of the time, the word peace, almost every time, is used in a positive, peaceful way that should make you kind of blink your eyes and want to take a nap. It should relax you. In most of the 450 uses, it's in your favor, folks. And it's a happy word, a good word. We just sang a song with all 7 of those things. Love, joy, peace. And they go together. And you can't hardly have one without another. But joy or peace is sort of toward the first. We need more lessons on joy too. Christians do. They have enough on do this or do that or God will hit you with a stick. You just preach too many of them, it's kind of hard to have joy. It's kind of at odds if all you talk about is that God that wants to stomp you if you zig and kick you if you zag. Like the guy that buried his talent. That's what he thought of his master. And you know what his master said? Okay, you feel like that? I'll be that way. That was Dennis's paraphrase, but check it out. But Jesus is called the Prince of Peace. So we need to watch out for words like always and every. I like to say seldom, if ever. Use always or never. Those words will get you in trouble. Jesus is probably what the book of Hebrews calls Melchizedek. Melchizedek means what? King of peace. King of peace, Melchizedek. And it's probably referring, most Bible scholars, I don't just mean us, I mean Catholics and serious Methodists and Baptists and Lutherans and so on, believe that Jesus is Melchizedek. I can think of one Western cult that does not, but anyway, Jesus is probably Melchizedek, the King of Peace himself. So he's not only the Prince of Peace, he's the King of Peace, if I'm right here. And again, we've discussed quickly, touched on, that the fruit of the Spirit is this, that, peace being in third position. That's Galatians 5:22, I think. The Bible tells us that the Lord gives us Christians peace that passes understanding. I like that. It says God will give us so much peace that what it means is we don't know why there's so much or where it come from. Why do I feel peaceful? Now, quite often what we actually experience, I guess there was some peace that passed my understanding. I never felt it or saw it, but by grab, it must have been there. There was some peace. I don't like that kind of peace where people say, well, you had peace when you didn't. I think it's felt as well as actual. It's subjective and objective. It's not just not just a fact. It's a feeling too. There's nothing wrong with feelings that God gives us. I think joy is in that realm. A great lesson or a series of lessons, guys, if you're looking for something when it's your turn, could be just on the teachings of, say, Paul or Jesus on the subject of peace. I'll help you with those, with the concordance, how to find all of those. A few dozen on each one, but several dozen with Paul on the subject of peace. They love that word. And they aren't the only ones. There is also James, the book of Hebrews, Philemon, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Jude, John, all those writers, Peter. And they all write about peace. But Paul and Jesus a lot. And you could have a whole series or set of lessons or whatever on their use of the word peace. Each time in a passage, put that little phrase or verse in the middle of 6 or 8 others or 10 and tell us what that means, what the subject was, where people were going, what they were doing and what they needed, and how Paul or Jesus addressed it. It'll give you some peace just doing it. I'll finally leave you with this, and I could go on, but I think we've made some good points here, and I exhort you guys to get a hold of something like Strong's Concordance, or maybe you got one on your smartphone things or something, and look up those 450 uses throughout your Bible, equally distributed page-wise in the New Testament and the Old. Both Testaments just love peace, and they're full of it. And all the different uses, what causes it, who did it, why was it, why wasn't it? And on and on. Ask yourself questions like that. What brings peace? Remember, it's a fruit of the Spirit. We're supposed to have it. It's your neighbor may not know if you have peace or not, but by grab you do, and the Lord does. So does the devil. So you need to be aware of those 3 people knowing about it, if you have peace or you care about peace or not. There's a lot of us warbirds that need to learn more about it. I have, from a small child, talking about all this, the holy fight, the Christian fight, fighting for the Lord, and get out your sword and helmet and all that. That's all good and true. But the purpose of a good fight is to bring about peace. The purpose of the Lord's fight with the devil is to bring about peace, not eternal war for its own sake. But John at the end of his old age. Let's turn to some of the things he's saying toward the end. Some people say Revelation wasn't his last book, but it was one of the second and third letters of John, but who cares? It's still way back there, and he was very old, perhaps 100. Conservative guesses 92 to 94 years old. Some people say maybe like 106. He was an old man, and he'd come into a congregation, couldn't even see, and people would lead him by the hand. And he'd say, brothers and sisters, love one another. While they'd be fighting and quarreling over who knows what. The church was already in its second or third generation of leaders by then. Some of the things in the Bible had just been written or weren't even written yet by then. But old John, remember, he's the one that, well, I'll put it in my words. He was Jesus' favorite apostle. He was the one that Jesus loved. Now, we know he loved the rest, but that means he was the special one. He was Jesus' best friend, you might say. David had a buddy named John, too. That was his best friend. And they compare themselves to each other a lot. John, at the end of in his old age, first thing he tells us in this book is to give us hope, and so on. John says in Revelation, chapter 1, verse 4 and 5, John, to 7 churches in Asia, grace to you and peace. From him who is and was and who is to come, and from the 7 spirits who are before his throne. I don't know who they are or what they might be. And from Jesus Christ, the faithful witness, the firstborn of the dead, and the ruler of the kings of the earth, to him who loves us and has released us from our sins by his blood, and he has made us to be a kingdom. Anyway, he come and he wished for us grace and peace. The very last use in your Bible of that word is on a little farther along, about chapter 6 or so of Revelation. Talks about a red horse who's going to take away peace from this earth. And that's not a happy note to end on, but I just hope that we all have things we need peace. Don't you get tired of some things? They go on and on. It might be in your family. It might be in the evening news. It might be something happening at the courthouse. It might be that bill collector or something, and you can't get any rest, inside or out. We need peace, folks. You kids may not think it's so neat. Kids like activity. I've been one once. I ain't done yet. But kids like activity, and they got a lot of energy. We get tired along about 40 or 50, don't we? And we would like some peace and some rest. And when we hear a phone ring, we'd like somebody be telling us something nice. They just got their house paid off, or they're found out their baby's going to be just fine, or whatever. We like news like that. We don't like when that phone rings and we're dreading something. That's not peace, is it? We like peace. We need peace, folks. And really, the kids thrive better under peace than they do under war and poverty and famine and dissension. And I've heard, that there's bad things even in some of the churches, and they don't have peace. Folks, this is wrong. That ain't what the Lord wants. He wants us to have love, joy, peace, patience, long-suffering, and all that. He's the Prince of Peace. He came to bring peace. He loves peace. And so if peace is the opposite of chaos and war and distress and all the things that are horrible, poverty and want, and we do need to be that. We need to join with the hippies if they would just get consistent. And not just nuclear disarmament and not being phony that we hate war, but we love revolution. It's got to be kind of equal, I would think. But they at least had a point. They had come through a couple generations of wars. World War II and then Korea right on its tail, and it would just jumping into Vietnam, they had a point. Their daddies and grandpas knew nothing but war. And they lost brothers and arms and legs and everything else because of that war. And those wars. And they wanted peace, but it was a blurry thing. They really didn't know what they were asking for. And today I don't know if they were willing to pay the price. But we had men in the pulpits that preached about it like I just did and taught about it like I just did. And this is what you should want, young people, old people. I don't even have to tell you. You already want it. But read Paul, read Jesus, read Peter and the rest of them, Matthew, all of them, and read your Old Testament. Grab 2/3 of the use of the word peace or throughout the pages, your Old Testament, and you will see that it's at least those things that I told you about, and maybe even a few more. And so I have said my piece, and I think with that I'll sit down and keep the peace.